Welcome to the Peace Country Historical Society podcast, where we blend community voices with historical expertise and talk about history in the Peace Country. From early settlers to modern trailblazers, we explore how history shapes our lives today. Subscribe to the Peace Country Historical Society podcast, where the past speaks and we listen.
We're back now with Marvin Moore, long-serving and hard-working builder of much of this region. We drive on roads, we attend hospitals, we go to schools, all of which has been touched by his catalytic hand and supervising the construction of these things. But there's a federal government connection too, and it's part of that conservative fellowship, you might say, that's part of Alberta culture. And right now, the MP for our Grand Prairie constituency and the chief opposition whip for the Conservative Party is Chris Warkentine. And he wrote something for us I'd like to read. Marv was a highly respected, long-serving cabinet minister who never lost sight of where he came from or the folks he was elected to serve. He's always been an outspoken champion of the Peace Country. I grew up watching Marv serve our community both as an elected representative and community volunteer. He's been an inspiration to many, including myself. His love for our province, community, and his family has always been evident. I'm thankful for his support, wise counsel, and example of what a public servant should be. Chris Warkentine sees you as an example. Now, you are from the same town that he grew up in. Did you run into each other much? Did you know him as a nice blonde-haired young kid in the streets? Or how did you first meet Chris Warkentine?
Oh, I had very little to do with him until after he became a member of Parliament, actually. But, he was raised in the boat, went to school there, but he's younger than me, so. But unfortunately, he's been there for 15 years, and they could never make the cabinet, and of course, they haven't been in government.
Gotta get them elected. Yeah.
Right.
So it's a tough sell. I tried to talk him into running provincially once, but he wasn't about to do that, so.
Okay. So let's go back and revisit some of those adventures you have in the provincial government along the way. What was your biggest obstacle in getting things done in your ministries?
Well, it just depends what it was. Sometimes it was, like we just talked about Highway 40, it was choosing a route or something.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was financing, you couldn't build everything in one term in office sort of thing. But I didn't really have that many obstacles. I was, Lougheed trusted me with everything, and then I served one term with Don Getty, Minister of Health, most of the time. But I don't really think about obstacles. You just work hard to get it done.
Well, I think so many stories from where I come from are stories of committees and cliques, factions that were always opposing you, voting you down, or if they had power, not letting you do things. I think there was a time when you weren't trusted by the Premier because you had worked on somebody's election that he didn't like.
I never had a problem with committees when I was in government or getting things done. You just, you covered all the bases, made sure you had everybody involved. And
yeah, okay.
so it was mostly it was pretty easy going.
So you wrote a letter to the newspaper with your concerns about the hospital back around 2012?
Well, what happened with the hospital is when I left political office, Don Getty was premier, and I didn't have much to do with the political party for a long time. And then when Don Getty resigned, I'd known Ralph Klein for quite a while because I was Minister of Municipal Affairs and Transportation for 8 of the years he was mayor of Calgary.
Okay.
And I phoned Ralph. I phoned the operator and asked me for his phone number, and I got it, and it turned out it was his home. And he was Minister of the Environment then, under Don Getty. And I said, Ralph, you should run for the leadership of the party. And so we had a conversation about that. And 2 or 3 weeks later, he phoned me back and said that he was running, and I helped him out in the Peace Country to get support. And the first we had a runoff. There was a vote on Saturday in every constituency. We had polls all over the place. And there was 8 of them running, and 6 of them were way behind, and him and Nancy Viktowski were
Right.
almost tied with 25,000 some votes, and Nancy had 1 more vote than he did. She was 1 vote ahead. So that Monday night we had a meeting in Edmonton. I went into it, and there was a lot of people sitting around the table, cabinet ministers who supported Ralph, going around the table us discussing how we're going to get votes out for the runoff next Saturday, only 6 days away. And finally Ralph, when they got all done, come to me, and I said, I don't see any minister here that's going to be in Nancy Viktowski's cabinet. You should all phone your secretary tonight, cancel every meeting you got for the next week, go home and work the coffee shops and the telephones, and all of you can double your vote if you work hard. And some of them did double their vote, and Ralph ran with a landslide the next Saturday.
Yep.
And that was it. I went home to the ranch, and then Ralph phoned me a while later and said wanted to see me in Edmonton. I went in there, and we had a meeting with him and Peter Elzinga, who was a good friend of his. And he said, I want you to be campaign chairman for the next provincial election. I said, I've never done that. But he was impressed with my straightforward way about getting votes out and stuff. So I wound up running 4 election campaigns for him, 93, 97, 01, and 04. He was a good guy to work with. He just said, what do I do next? For 30 days, I looked at his agenda and worked it all out and told him where we're going, and he was very good to work with.
Was he?
Yeah.
Yes.
After he got elected, I think it was 2000, around 2000, 2001, the chairman of the Alberta Cancer Board was retiring, and he asked me if I would chair the Cancer Board, because I'd been Minister of Health for a while. So I was chairman of the Alberta Cancer Board for 6 years, and then retired from that. And then I thought I was done with healthcare, but Gary Marr called me. What happened in the Grand Prairie is there was a health region called Mistahaya, and the board was terminated because they had problems running it. And it wasn't the board's fault really, but they were working under a funding formula that had not enough funds for a large rural area with a whole bunch of small hospitals. So they brought 2 consultants in from Edmonton to run it, and then Gary Marr was minister and decided to put a board back in, and so he asked me if I'd chair it, and they were electing half the board and appointing the other half, and I decided to run for election because it would be better than being appointed by a friendly minister, and so I ran for election. It turned out the election area was from Grand Cache to Fairview, a lot of my old constituency, so a couple of guys ran against me. But what happened then, they changed Mistahaya, they amalgamated with Peace River, and we called it Peace Country Health. And actually the reason for Peace Country Health, my wife wrote a long 1-page letter about all the reasons why it should be called Peace Country Health, and the board bought that idea, and that's what we called it, and it amalgamated us with everything in the Peace Country except high level. They wanted to be somewhere else, so they wound up with Fort McMurray. So then, you know, several things happened then. One of them was CEO Dalton Russell said, we need to expand this hospital. Grand Prairie's expanding, we got to do something. And so I thought we expand on the existing site, but we did some studies. We had a group, a Hanscom group, come in and do a study for us about what we should do. And they had 3 options. One was to expand on the existing site. We had to tear down McKinsey Place, build a couple of skyscrapers, and deal with all the disturbance of that for 4 or 5 years. And second option was to build a new acute care on a new site. The third option was to leave acute care where it's at and build a new site for all the ancillary care. And it turned out that the least costly of all the ventures was to build a new acute care hospital on a new site. So we worked on that program. We did what we call a somatic design, which is just a listing of the programs you need and the space you need, not designing the building.
Right.
We got that done, and Gary Marr was minister's, I think he was still minister then, and we got that approved. And then we were waiting for approval to actually go to construction, and we'd do the design work then, and it would take a couple of years to get the building all designed and everything, and then out for tender. They appointed a new Minister of Health, Ron Leipert, and he decided in a very short space of time to do away with all the regional health authorities and the former Alberta Health, which 20 years later is still trying to get its feet on the ground. So Peace Country Health was terminated right away, like within 11 o'clock in the morning. It got terminated. I got a phone call at 10 after that the board's terminated, sort of thing. So we were all gone from that, but I still had an interest in getting this hospital going, so I went to work on it over the next several years, and it was canceled 3 times. They hired a guy from Australia to run Alberta Health Service, and he didn't want to build a hospital. And it's a long story. I wrote about it in my my book I wrote, and we finally got it built. It took a long time, and it went through a lot of ministers and a couple of premiers. But
It sounds though like you were the engine that never quit.
Yes.
On the hospital I worked on trying to get it built for 8 years after we were terminated as a board.
Well, you see, this
But
is a
there
story.
was nobody else sticking up for the region.
Yep.
And I was the only one that had a lot of information and time to do it and motivated to do it.
Right.
But I had help, like there was a member of the board of Alberta Health Service in Grand Prairie, and he wound up talking to Glenn Keddy, who's Keddy's there, about a new plan to build a little bit onto the college and have doctor training there, and no new hospital. And Glenn was a good friend of mine. He phoned me, "Did you hear about this?" I said, "No." So I went come into town, and he showed me what was happening. And then I wound up organizing a meeting in Edmonton, and Tom Shields was Ed Stelmach, the Premier's campaign manager for the Peace Country. So I phoned Tom and said, "We got to organize a meeting with the Premier." So Tom went ahead and helped organize that, and I worked on it too. And then we went to Edmonton, and the Premier's birthday that day, so we had a party in his office, in the cabinet room, and then went downstairs for a meeting. He never showed up. But the Deputy Minister of Health, the Deputy Minister of Infrastructure was there, 12 staff members at least, and my job was to explain everything we'd done. And I spent half an hour explaining where we came from and where we got to, that we needed a new hospital. And the Deputy Minister of Hospital was sitting next to me. Jay Ramana was his name, and I had a document of 104 pages of the studies we'd done, and he said, "Where'd you get that?" And I said, "Well, that's what we done." He'd never seen it before, because
Wow.
Alberta Health Service hadn't showed with him. Anyway, we left there with a very good feeling that everybody in the room understood we needed a new hospital in Grand Prairie. And it still took a while to get pounded into the Premier's head and the Finance Committee, but we finally got it started. So,
Yes, yes.
you know, if it hadn't been for the information I got secondhand from a member through Glenn Keddy, and then
Yes.
going to Edmonton and having this meeting, it probably would have never happened.
Yeah.
They would have built onto the college. But anyway, it's a long story. It was 8 years of hard work after I left Peace Country Health to get it built. But it was enjoyable.
But you had the strategic insight. I commented you're like a general in the sense that you had staff and you became staff to get this strategic insight turned into a building.
Yeah.
You know.
Well,
Right.
well, unfortunately, you know, I knew a lot of the people in the government yet, because I hadn't been out that long.
That's true. Yeah.
So I could phone Gary Marr or the Minister of Health, you know, talk to him personally, so it was helpful that way.
Well, and one thing I just like to throw in here at this time, Marv, of course you know all about this, but anyway, it's a note from the office of Peter Lawhate, and this is dated August the 1st of 86. Marv, a most effective deal with the doctors. Best piece of business out of the government in some months. always thought that such an arrangement was possible. But as you recall, the purists in the former caucus prevented such negotiations until now. Pleased you're where you are. All the best to Fran. Signed, Peter. P.S. It's almost unfair how much fun I'm having. Give me a call.
Yeah, that was, Peter had left as premier then, and the issue was that we had to eliminate extra billing by doctors or would be penalized by Ottawa. And as Peter said in his memo, he couldn't get it passed when he was premier. And then Ontario just absolutely passed the legislation to eliminate extra billing, and the doctors went on strike, and it was a hell of a mess. And I just quietly negotiated with the chairman of the Alberta Medical Association.
Mm-hmm.
And got it done quietly, and then announced it in the legislature, and it was all over. And a lot of people couldn't believe it. How did you do this? Well, sit down with somebody.
Yeah,
One of the
hard
things-
work and determination.
Yes, and quite different from the relationship between the government and the doctors that came after, and where it's at now.
Right.
Yeah,
You know,
well,
right.
it's never an easy thing, but one of the things I did is for the 3 years I was in hospital and medical care, I did the negotiations with the doctors myself. I didn't have I had help. I had a lady by the name of Susan Green who worked for me, did a lot of the background work. But I did the negotiation myself, and it was a lot better than having some of your staff do it and go back and forth and finally figure out what's going on.
But you weren't a doctor and you weren't a lawyer. You were someone who'd run a business
Right.
and worked your way up and had a confidence as well as the fresh outlook. You weren't tied down by committees or precedents or legal
Yeah,
training.
That's true.
You were serving the people, which has been your footprint in your whole
Yeah.
career.
Yes,
Has
yes.
been no nonsense. Let's just do the job, take care of people, right?
Right.
Yeah, your mark is on that. Like your mark
Figure
is,
it out.
yeah, your mark is on the hospital, and your mark is on the roads.
Right.
We look around. This is the world that Marv made happen.
Mm-hmm.
For us that we
Exactly.
live on today. Tell me
Yes.
about those bison, though.
I was pretty good at dealing with people, but I was never very good in school. Well, I had honors in quite a few things, but in grade 11 I failed French,
Oh,
because who would ever need French?
Yes.
that's right.
Then 16 years later I was the MLA for the largest French-speaking constituency in Alberta. And then I didn't fail typing, but I looked at my fingers and typed, because who would need typing? Girls are the only ones that type. Men never typed.
Uh-oh.
So now you know what it is. You got the computer board in front of you all the time.
Right. Right.
Anyway, go ahead.
Okay, you were left behind in a couple things, but you seem to be on top of the bison question.
Yes.
Oh yeah, well, in 1993 I decided I formed an income tax business when I left politics, and that lasted 4 or 5 years, and then I quit that and I decided to go into buffalo instead of grain farming, and then I bought a whole bunch of buffalo and expanded the ranch, and then I had absentee owners. I'd sell a herd to somebody and they'd keep it at my place and they'd get half the calf crop. And Ralph knew about this, and one night him and Peter Zing and I had dinner and a couple of glasses of wine afterwards, and Ralph said, I need to buy some buffalo. How many can I get for $10,000? I said, well, there are $1,500 a head then. I said 10 head, so he wrote me a check for 10,000, and I gave him 1,000 back a while later, and he got 6 buffalo. And then the first couple of years he got some return on them, and then the market collapsed and he got pretty near nothing, and finally I bought the calves from him on that
Oh,
end.
did you?
Or the cows from him rather, yeah. But he didn't make any money because he hit it at the wrong time.
The wrong time, yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, he was my smallest absentee owner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some guys had 50 head, some had 25,
Wow.
and so on.
Right. Yes. And then did you not have was it called Marv, a meat packing part of your business as well? Was there something to do?
Oh, well, no, it's just the market collapsed because we were raising too many animals and we had no meat market. But then we got going again and I started a feedlot and I was feedlotting everything and shipping to a packing plant in North Dakota that I had shares in.
That's what I was thinking of.
And then BSE hit and the border to the U.S. closed the next day and the market collapsed again. So I never had a meat market, but I put up signs on the highway, sides of buffalo cut and wrapped, $1.99 a pound, and H&M Meats processes for me. I got about $500 for a 1,200 pound bull.
Oh, wow.
It's now worth $4,000.
Yeah. Wow.
So that was the downside in it, and then eventually it went back again.
Your ranch is still going, though, is it not? The boys are just looking after it now?
Well, we were pretty well out of them. I got a few head on my home place.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And perhaps we should just bring up the Blue Book, Marv.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that goes back to my first year as Minister of Agriculture. In 1976, I was home trying to spray my fields with a metal can of spray, all in metric. It was in hectares and kilopascals for spray pressure and liters. And no cell phone in those days, no information about how to convert it to acres and everything.
Right.
And I was sitting in the middle of the field saying, how the hell's every other farmer figuring this out? So I went back to Edmonton and said to my deputy minister, Dr. Hugh Horner, we got to print a book with, we'll change all this stuff to acres and pounds per square inch. We can deal with liters because we already had that for 4 or 5 years. Our milk came in liters. He gave it to the assistant deputy minister who was in charge of that area, and he came back a couple of weeks later and said, we can't do nothing because the feds will be mad and the chemical companies won't participate. And I thought it over and I said to Dr. Donahue, well, let's print the book and put a blue cover on it because the social credit covers are all green. And I wanted our color on it. So.
There you go.
And now the Blue Book is over 600 pages and used throughout Canada and the U.S.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
It's the Bible of spraying crops.
Well, there you go.
So I'm pretty proud of that. It didn't take me very long to do that. It was 2 half-hour meetings and sitting in the middle of the field with a spray can with nothing on it but metric.
Well, certainly my impression, Marv, is, just speaking with you and also reading reports from the premiers that you were involved with, the utmost respect they had for your dedication to the province, to your area, and I truly believe if there was a job out there they wanted done, that's why they called on Marv Moore. So you definitely have a reputation for, as they say, just get her done when called upon. And I certainly thank you for your taking the time out for us today. And is there anything else that you would like to add?
Oh, thank you for having me. The bottom line is, all my life in public office, I enjoyed everything I was doing, made friends right across Alberta and across the country. So it was a pleasure just being able to serve.
Yes, I do truly believe that you enjoyed every moment of it, that's for sure, as did your family. I have one little bit that I would like to read, and this was just a little bit from your daughter. And she talks, I asked her, so what was it really like being, a child of a politician? And she said it was just a way of life. Dad left for Edmonton from Sunday night or early Monday morning to Friday night. So we did not know the difference. Often when Dad was home on the weekend, he had Smoky River constituency functions to attend, and I went with them, as I was only 8 when Dad was elected. I'm sure it was harder for Mom, who looked after the farming, the kids, the house, and the many hours of community involvement while Dad was gone. Not only that, but she became the volunteer constituency secretary during the 18 years that Dad was in government. And as there was no constituency places, just our office phone, We all learned how to properly answer the phone and write down messages. Once my 2 older brothers got their driver's license, they would drive me to where I needed to go, which sure helped Mom some. Once Dad retired, he started the Buffalo Ranch, KLB Bison Ltd., and we all worked there under Dad's care. So that was very nice.
That is nice.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, when I was in university, there was a book written called Character and Circumstance. And this guy said the biography of Canadians is one of forging this kind of character, flexible, practical, determined, loyal,
Yes.
and impatient with barriers that seemed unwieldy or unnecessary. And that
Right.
was the reputation we got as soldiers overseas as well.
Right.
But circumstances, that character doesn't mean much if there isn't a need for it.
Right.
And when the way circumstances worked in our history, there's always been a need for people like that, not ideologues or theorists or people that are afraid to try something. But the other characteristics win through. And I think of you, Marvin, you're a classic example of the Canadian character and the need and circumstances meeting each other in a way to make history,
Right.
which is
Thank you.
part of the story of our province and our region. Is the
Absolutely.
characters in the need, and when the need arises, they rise to the occasion.
Right.
And so thank you for that.
Yes.
Okay, we're all done.
Yep.
Thank you for tuning in to the PCHS Podcast. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you are notified when we release new episodes. To learn more about the Peace Country Historical Society, visit our website, pc-hs.ca.